Unfortunately, I think this book has a really fatal flaw that's at the very center of the whole concept of the book. And it really kind of leads into all the other problems that I had with it. The Strength of the Few by James Islington. It's book 2 in the Hierarchy Trilogy. I read The Will of the Many, and I read it very quickly. The year it came out, it was one of my favorite books released that year. And so I was really anticipating The Strength of the Few, but then also a little confused why I felt like the reception to this felt a lot more muted than the first book until I read it. As always, this is a non-spoiler review, and I try to make it so I don't spoil anything, book 1 or book 2, but I'm going to talk about some stuff in general a little bit. So in the first book, something happens which causes us to split into 3 different stories in this book. It's rough because the first book really spent, well, a whole entire book building up a world, and a really interesting world with a fascinating sort of magic system and really great characters following some sort of, some classic models, but done in a really entertaining way. And whenever we go back to that world in this book, I was immediately engaged. I wanted to read the next chapter, and I was really loving kind of where the storyline was going. But the problem is there are 2 other books sandwiched in with this book. One of them I eventually came around to, and that is the sort of Egyptian-themed world that happens here. Now, that world at least had a really interesting character in the form of Netriket, I think. Great character, really interesting. We don't really necessarily get to know her really well, but that's kind of in the mode of the character. There's some great stuff that happens back on Res. We get to know Aquia a lot more, really loved her as a character. But the third world, Lyceum, sort of this Irish, Celtic sort of esque world, I never got into. I was completely bored by the entire time. Unfortunately, it kind of felt to me like a really slow-moving, bad episode of Xena Warrior Princess. Then it's combined with some really just bad characterization, some really forced found family stuff going on there with characters who have no real defining features. There's a love interest that really doesn't work at all. And that's one of the hard things about this book. The characterization was so good in the first book, and when we lean on that, on Res, it sings. I love it. I want more and more and more. There are some decisions made that I feel like undercut the first book or sort of waste opportunities, waste characters. But again, maybe they'll come back in book 3 and it'll all feel much better. But yeah, Strength of the Few, I think I gave this like 3 out of 5 stars. The first book I gave 5 out of 5. A little bit of a disappointment, I'm not gonna lie. But I am still with the story, and I will check out the third book.